District Bylaw Committee to order April 15th, 2021, 6 p.m. I'm going to do a roll call. Mark Robinson,
Here.
Amy Cates,
Here.
Penny Levert,
Here.
Rick Pisano,
He's here.
yeah, I know. Rick, can you hear me?
No, we lost him.
Try a thumbs up.
Rick? That must be Rick making that noise, right?
Yeah, I was having some trouble with my sound. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you now. Okay.
Okay.
I just did the roll call. I signed you in.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So Mark Boudreau reviewed the suggested changes to the updates to the bylaws. He confirmed, Mark, that if you want to vote in our elections, you have to be registered to vote in the state of Massachusetts to vote in the district election.
I'm sorry, what was that, Fran? You had to be registered in Massachusetts.
You have to be a registered Massachusetts voter to vote in the district elections.
But not a Katuitt resident.
No, you have to be a Katuitt resident also, but you have to be registered to vote in the town of Barnstable, in Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
so briefly, the changes or revisions we made in section 3. There's just a Scrivener's error in the last line. And it needs to read, are to be made after consultation with the chief. Section 7, in the first line, we added, should the fire chief not be available or the deputy chief not be available to respond to a fire.
Fran, I don't know that we have a deputy chief now, but I don't know that we'll always have a deputy chief. I think that it reads fine to say that if the fire chief isn't available, then the next officer in charge or the most senior officer would take over for him so that the bylaws actually do read correctly. We may not always have a deputy chief, but we have one now.
Well, I think as long as we have one now, it should read the deputy chief.
Well, then we'd have to change it when we don't have one. Isn't the point of the bylaws to be something that is technically correct and would technically cover most situations?
Well, I think it needs to cover the existing situation. And I'm not sure that, we need to worry about not having a deputy chief in the future.
Well, then we'd have to amend it so that we'd be, if it's correct as it stands, that if the chief isn't available, then the next officer in charge, the most senior, the highest ranking officer would take over. So that's something that would cover in any and all events.
Any other comments on this topic?
I personally feel that it should reflect what things are now. We have amended these things off and on through the years as changes have been made. I think it's fine, the addition or the deputy chief.
Well, it would be the deputy chief, Penny. Since we have a deputy chief, then the next
Right.
person in charge at this moment would be the deputy chief. Even if we didn't mention the deputy chief, it would just be the logical result.
Rick?
He's muted.
You're muted, Rick.
The upper right-hand corner.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sound like an old commercial for cell phones. Okay, so I lost it when Fran and Amy were discussing whether the wording should be deputy chief or senior officer. What did I miss after that?
Well, Amy doesn't seem to think that the change to include the senior to the deputy chief is necessary because someday we might not have a deputy chief.
Well, we have every intention of maintaining the position for as long as I can foresee because it's proven to be very useful, both in terms of operations and in terms of advancement possibilities for retention of younger aspiring firefighters. So I would be in favor of it reading deputy, but and I think that Amy's point is correct, that as long as it reads next highest officer, we're covered. But I do think that in deference to the deputy chief, he ought to be
Recognized.
recognized.
Mark?
I agree with Rick, and I think that it should send a signal that we have a deputy chief as well. I think that's important.
So, can I have a motion to retain the addition in section 7? Should the fire chief or the deputy chief be recommended to be added to the bylaws?
So moved.
Second.
Second,
All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
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 Amy, no.
Okay, thank you. So the next suggested revision is section 2 regarding the water commissioners. And the section is the water commissioners or their assistants may enter upon the premises of any water taker to examine apparatus to ascertain the use of which the water is applied or to find and stop any waste. And the recommended update is change section 11, or water superintendent and water department employees. Is that agreeable to everyone?
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, great. Can I have a motion to accept?
moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Amy, I.
And the last is Article 9, Section 1, to first sentence, instead of all elected boards and committees shall be required, the suggested update is required to expected to hold at least one regular monthly meeting.
I agree.
Have we had a motion? Is there discussion now?
Yes, there's discussion.
Okay, I think it should stay required. I think that the committee should be required to hold at least one regular monthly meeting, not expected. I mean, what does expected do?
Well,
If
I
there's
can
no-
tell you that the water department, water commission sometimes meets twice a month. And
Yeah,
then
I know.
we might give ourselves the next month off because we've done our business, so to speak. I think it's, the boards know they need to meet regularly to get their business done. But I don't think that we should be penalized because we, had a quorum issue in 1 month and whatever. I just think it's an expectation. We're being paid to be faithful servants, and I think that there's been no question that we've met that goal. We've certainly met 12 times a year.
I personally feel that we should be capable of deciding when we need to have a meeting, not be required to do it.
Rick?
I've chaired the fire board for the past 6 years, and we probably averaged closer to 24 meetings a year at a minimum. But there have been in those 6 years 2 occasions that I remember clearly when we missed an entire month because of problems with quorum, travel, illness, conflicts, and it was not anything that we took lightly, but even though at the time the wording was required, the sheriff didn't show up and, arrest anybody. So it just seems excessive.
And the Prudential Committee obviously clearly meets more than 12 times a year. And we do our best to meet every month, but sometimes there are unforeseen circumstances where, we can meet, the beginning of one month and the end of that month, and, there's no need to meet the following month. So I think expected is an acceptable verbiage for this.
I've been on the board for 3 years now, and I can't think of a meeting, maybe one, where we haven't had all 3 commissioners there. So I think there's a good bit of diligence. Now you could say, well, some people might get a rogue board that decides it never needs to meet. Well, then they'll be voted out very quickly, I would think.
Any other discussion? Okay, so I'll accept a motion to change section 1, all elected boards shall be from required to expected to hold at least one regular monthly meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amy? Are you
You're
gonna
mute,
vote?
Amy.
You're
Amy, your
muted.
mute is on.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Amy, no, Fran, thank you for asking.
All right. So that's the end of the agenda.
Fran, I missed Article 1, Section 7 about the candidate for district office. Did we start with that? Article 1, officers, Section 7.
I don't think we even addressed that.
Page 2. We discussed it at our January meeting.
Amy,
Fran,
refresh my memory.
no,
Yes,
Fran did initially address that. She inquired about it.
Oh, was that how you began the meeting?
That's
Okay,
how we
and-
began the meeting. She already
Okay.
addressed that.
So we're amending it to not being just any candidate for district office must be a resident, but we're saying must be a voter.
No,
So then
that's
we
not-
are dealing, what?
No, that was just the answer to a question. I don't believe it's.
There was no change, no
There's
change
no
needed.
change to the bylaw.
Why would we leave it resident if the requirement would be that they would be a voter?
Because a resident is assuming that they're a voter in this fire, in the village. They're a full-time resident.
Well, it doesn't say full-time, and it doesn't say that they're a registered voter. They could be a property owner, so they would be,
They-
so would that make them a resident?
That would make them a resident. That wouldn't make them eligible to vote.
Okay, so shouldn't we articulate that in Article 1, Section 7?
I don't know. I'd have to read it myself. I think.
So it's page 2,
Just one line on page 2, the last.
yeah, Section 7.
Amy, could you read that for me? I don't have my copy.
I'd
in
be
front of
glad
me.
to. Any candidate for district office, I'll tell you how it currently reads. Any candidate for district office must be a resident of the Katuitt Fire District. I thought we discussed amending that to must be a voter resident or a taxpayer voter, taxpayer resident of the Katuitt Fire District. So I thought we should articulate that that person was in fact a voter in the Katuitt Fire District.
Because Mark, didn't you originally raise the question if somebody was a part-time
He did.
resident?
Yes,
And Mark Boudreau responded with clarifying that the part-time, full-time resident was irrelevant. It was that the
Yes.
person had to be a registered voter
correct.
in the district. So if we replace the word resident with registered voter, we're covered.
Yes, that's what I think, Rick.
But we're already covered now because nobody can vote without signing in and being checked off the voter list, and they can't attend the annual meeting and get a card without being checked off on the voter list.
But this sentence talks about any candidate for district office. So Article 1, Section 7 addresses a candidate for district office. So any candidate for district office must be a registered voter of the Katuitt Fire District. That would be my suggestion to amend that line. You know, so that if you're not a voter, but you're a property owner and you come to the meeting and you have lots of great ideas and you can come to any meeting, ask any questions of any committee. And but that you would not be eligible to be a candidate for district office.
Okay, does everybody agree with that change?
I don't have any objection to it.
I don't object to it. It's probably a good idea.
Okay, all right. So, could I have a motion to change that? What line number is it?
It's Article 1, Section 7, and it's on page 2 of our bylaws. I'll read it for as a motion. Article 1, Section 7, and it now reads, any candidate for district office must be a resident of the Katuitt Fire District, and we would amend that to be any candidate for district office must be a registered voter of the Katuitt Fire District.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, Amy, aye.
Okay,
Let's see if there's anything else any notes I had.
Fran, is it possible to redistribute this after today's meeting? So we have
Sure.
the change. I have a meeting of the Water Commission next week. I'd like to show them.
Fran, do these bylaws exist in draft form right now?
no,
No, okay. All right.
Fran, with these changes, will the revised bylaws, as revised by vote tonight, does that go to the annual district meeting?
yes, it does. These have to be approved by the annual district meeting. So I'll give them to Charlie and he'll put them in the proper form to be on the warrant. Is there any public comment?
Yes, I do. Carol Zace here.
Mhm.
I don't know if this is the right committee, and so I'm asking for advice, but I was wondering if in the future, if this is the right committee, would you guys, would it be of consideration to start having term limits for our elected officials like they do for the town council? In the town of Barnstable, you can do 3 consecutive terms before you have to take a year off, and then you can come back in. That's one concept. And the other is I would very much like to see about a bylaw or a policy advisory, whatever, for rotation of the chairs like the water commissioners do. They rotate their chair every year, and it provides for a shared knowledge of what it means to be a chairman and how to work on the commissioner's board. And I've seen it be very effective. They always have the person in their second term, or maybe Mark, you can talk to this better, and it
They
allows
throw us to the
for-
wolves after 1 year.
Yeah. But it works, and it allows each commissioner, when you're on the board, you have all three of the commissioners at any point in time being knowledgeable of how to run meetings, how to, interact with the staff of their commission. And I'm just wondering where in the district this would come up. If not a bylaw change, would it be a policy or whatever?
I personally think that that particular change should be left to the discretion of each committee and how they wish to run their committee. It's being the chairman, I don't think anybody on my committee, in the past or presently, or certainly on Rick's committee or Mark's committee, doesn't understand the people that they're working with, their staff, their policies, and what they're doing. And I don't think this is necessarily a learning ground for how to chair a committee. But I really think that
We disagree. I think it's a shared responsibility among the commissioners, and that way you always have the commissioners, at least two of them, have gone through the process in any cycle. So we just disagree. I think it's a great idea, and I've seen it work very effectively on the water commissioners.
I think it's been more of a practice than a policy with the Water Commission. I do know that in other organizations, there are very valuable board members who just do not have the personality to be a chair. And I don't think it should be a requirement. I think it's a great practice, as you say, Carol, but I don't think it should be a requirement.
Cynthia
What was
Gardner.
your first point, Carol? I forgot.
That there be term limits.
Oh, term limits.
Well,
Yeah.
excuse me, the first point was what's the proper venue for this
Correct.
topic? And I was still unclear as to whether or not this board would be the proper venue for the discussion about the concept of either term limits or rotating chairmanship.
I have no idea.
Nor do I.
no, I think it's probably policy advisory.
All right.
But I
I'll
just,
wait till Cindy talks. Cindy, were you gonna say something?
may I
Yeah.
say something?
Oh, absolutely.
Kate? Thank you. I was going to say about the term limits. There are not people knocking down the door to be on these committees. And frequently it's a great deal of work to get people to run for these committees. So I really don't think that, term limits is,
You have four
nice as
people.
that, as nice
I
as
could
that
t-
would be to see in, the Massachusetts state legislature with our representatives down here or the federal government, I don't think that's the way our system is set up. And-
Again, I respectfully disagree. And you had 3 candidates recently for replacing Silvio. So I think there are people out there. It's just a matter of, you can't go up against institutions.
Well, I'm gonna be the fly in the ointment, Carol. I'm very familiar with the Dennis Water District, and it's extremely well-run district. They win New England awards for the quality of their water, and 2 of the 3 water commissioners have been on the board for more than 50 years. And I am not kidding. Peter McDowell and Paul Prue, bless their hearts. So there is an institutional knowledge that comes with that kind of
Absolutely.
experience.
And it leaves when they're gone because you haven't had more people involved. I mean, to get more people involved in the Katuitt Fire District is where I'm coming from. So It's okay. It's not the right
Well,
committee.
I mean, there's somebody running every year, so if they want to get involved, they can attend meetings, which we don't have many people come to the meetings, and then they can run. I mean, every year there's a seat that's open. So,
Actually, 3 seats that are open every year, right?
well,
3 committees.
one seat on my commission, one on
Right,
yours.
but each of us have a chair open each year.
I think that it's taken me 3 full years just to get a good grasp of the operations of the water department.
Right. I didn't imply that term limits would be 1 term.
Yeah, but still, I mean, I'm still learning.
I mean, we are going to, Jessica Rapp Grissetti has been representing us for 12 years. That's going to be a big void now because she can't be, but it's a good opportunity to get someone else in there so that we have a next person learning and continuing on. It's a moot point.
To argue with you, Carol, stepping down for a year and then you could run again and serve another 9, 12 years, whatever. So, right?
Yep.
So I could argue it either way.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of 50 years on a board. I think that's wonderful.
Carol, did you want to say something?
No, that was it. I was just shaking my head with the 50
Sorry.
years like you guys all like, wow, that's a lot.
I'm sorry, I meant Cindy.
Yes, I have a question. I put in a public records request a couple months ago and the clerk has been unable to find the original bylaws of the district. That is a document we should have. I don't know if anybody might know where it might be, but it's something that should have been filed with the state. And it's a historical document that the district should have.
Well, just so you know, I've contacted the Secretary of State's office. I also did a document search going back through back into the 1920s, going through the Mass General laws at the point of the Katuitt Fire District being implemented, and there's nothing.
Okay, so that's going to be my next thing. One thing that we discussed during policy advisory is making sure that we start keeping our historical records better. And if next year the bylaw committee could take it upon themselves to maybe start putting dates under the bylaws when they're accepted or changed, so that maybe in 20 years when someone wants to look at a bylaw, they'll know where they need to go to find out why that bylaw was changed and what the historical reason was. Because I'll tell you right now, the historical reason why the bylaw read that you had to be required to have a monthly meeting was 15 years ago. There was a period of time when one board didn't meet for almost 3 consecutive months. And so the citizens of this district put together that bylaw. So there's always history when there's a bylaw change. And it would just be nice so that if someone ever wanted to know that history, they'd know where to go back in the annual report to look for it. And I just think it would be a nice thing to add to our bylaws. Thank you.
Okay.
Fran, it's Amy. Did we do Article 11, Section 11, which is on page 15? Did you handle that at the beginning since it refers to citizens versus voters? It's on page 15, Fran?
No, no, and we didn't address that. And I think specifically the reason that says citizens is so that citizens can be involved on the bylaw or policy advisory committee or on a subcommittee. And they don't, so that would include part-time residents, and they don't have to be, classified as a voter. And that's why I think that's the difference between why one said resident and one said citizen.
Oh, okay. So you think that we should leave citizens to act on an ad hoc committee? That
Yes,
they don't need to be voters?
yes.
Okay.
That's an
Is there any other
interesting point.
discussion on that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. It means, to your earlier question, Mark, from the last meeting, about who gets to serve. This does at least provide some access for part-time residents who are registered at their primary address to nonetheless participate in some of the political life of the district.
I actually reviewed that with Mark Boudreau. So,
So we're not taking that up we're not taking that up for discussion and to potentially.
we
put
can,
it
we can
forward.
discuss it, what everybody thinks. I think it was done with a specific purpose in mind to allow part-time residents to be able to participate.
I think it's an important thing to have in there because so many times these part-time residents say they have no input at all. And it gives them an opportunity to participate.
Yes.
Right. Good point, Penny. Thank you very much. I rest, Fran.
Okay. So I'll accept a motion. If we're all set, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So
So
move.
moved.
All those,
Penny and I are in a race.
We are.
is there a second?
Junior
Second.
second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Aye.
everybody. Have a good
Nice
evening.
night.